universities, UK, US, Canada, and Chile. There are a myriad of issues relating to the education system in the DCS. The teachers do not receive similar pay to their counterparts. They are not entitled to summer breaks. They are required to teach more than one subject, and they do not benefit from seminars offered to other teachers during summer. The students do not benefit from the services of specialist teachers, such as in reading. The curriculum is not monitored by the Ministry of Education. There is almost a disconnect between the DCS and the Ministry of Education in this regard. This must change in order for correctional facilities to become centers of transformation through purposeful rehabilitation for successful reintegration. For the first time, the Ministry will take advantage of the provision within the Corrections Act that allows for the establishment of an advisory council that will advise the Minister on matters relating to the operations of the DCS. Regulations have been drafted for the establishment of an advisory council, and members are being identified to advance this initiative that will support effective management of correctional facilities. Steps will be taken to implement the GCCF Trust Limited. This trust will enable the JCF to receive donations that will be used to strengthen its capacity to achieve its mandate and offer scholarships to inmates. Mr. Speaker, the youth are the future. We have to find ways to effectively reach them and include them in our youth engagement efforts as active participants. The JCCF has designed the Youth Challenge with targets non-cadets in at-risk communities. 60 at-risk youths between 13 and 16 years old are being targeted for this intervention. They will benefit from cadet-type training, which will build confidence and promote self-reliance, initiative, a sense of service to others, leadership development, and teamwork. Mr. Speaker, I firmly believe in forging strategic partnership that will allow us to leverage the knowledge, experience, and resources of stakeholders for greater efficiency and impact. I am pleased to note that in creating the platform for a modernized correctional services, we have engaged many partners in a meaningful way to advance purposeful rehabilitation for successful reintegration. In this regard, I commend the OAS, USAID, and Trust for the Americas that have done tremendous work with the DCS to improve the quality of and access to reintegration services, technical training, and individualized psychological, emotional services for juvenile offenders. Through the project entitled A New Path, promoting a healthy environment and productive alternatives for juvenile remandees and offenders, more than 1,460 youths have received assistance, and more than 160 officers and staff have received training and strategies and tools to deal with challenging behavior. I wish also to acknowledge the work of the European Union through Stand Up for Jamaica for the invaluable work in 9 of the 11 correctional institutions. I wish to express sincere appreciation to the pastors, counselors, and many volunteers in our correctional system who carry their hearts and burden of redemption for our fellow citizens who are incarcerated and their reintegration in communities and the society at large. I would like to recognize Food for the Poor, the Stella Maris Foundation, RADA Coconut Board, 4-H Club, the Jamaica Agricultural Society, Hard Trust NTA, the Caribbean Cement Company, Courtney Walsh Cricket Foundation, and the Management Chest Foundation. We also recognize the involvement of all NGOs, churches, private sector entities, and individuals who work in our correctional facilities. Mr. Speaker, in closing, let me just say we aim to be transparent as we carry out the plans I have outlined here. What remains would be a leaner operation that lends itself to greater efficiency and productivity. Through the JCCF and the DCF, people will be given an opportunity to develop important skills that assist them to function as contributing members of society. I invite, Mr. Speaker, the public to go to the website of the JCCF and the DCF and follow their Facebook pages, as we will update you in real time on the progress we are making with all the plans I have outlined. Mr. Speaker, I invite the entire Jamaica, all citizens, our partners, and yes, this entire House, to join us on this journey where we are trying to make the prisons of this country a safer place to be and purposeful in its implementation of policies. Thank you very much.
All right. Thanks, sir. All right, Minister of Security.
Well done, Minister. Mr. Speaker, I ask now for a recommittal. Time being beyond 3:15, I ask for a recommittal of the item questions and answers to questions.
The members have heard the Minister. Those in favor? Those against? As ever. Questions and answers to questions.
Mr. Speaker, the Minister of Health will now present the answers and respond accordingly.
Dr. Tofton. Dr. Campbell. The time is now 4:42:24, beyond the time that questions should normally ask and answer. The House will have to give approval. Those in favor?
Mr. Speaker, I drew your attention to the fact that we had gone beyond the time for asking questions.
Yes, you did.
I requested of you that you put to the House the suspension of standing orders to permit us to take questions. That permission was given. I find this attempt redundant. I am therefore asking you to ask the member to put his question to the Minister of Health.
Dr. Campbell, you may ask the question of the Minister as order, please. Dr. Campbell would like to proceed.
I know. Mr. Speaker.
Go ahead, Mr. Campbell.
I'd like to ask the Minister of Health to answer the question standing in my name.
Mr. Daly, please. Mr. Daly, you're sitting in the leader's chair. Please, stop communicating across the border so that I can proceed with the business. Do not do it, man. There's no excuse in that. Mr. Campbell, you may ask the Minister questions and the Minister now proceed to answer.
Mr. Speaker, the following are the responses to questions asked by the member. Question 1, would the Minister please confirm whether or not it is only mold infestation that is affecting the building at the Cornwall Regional Hospital facility, or are there other toxins, physical and biological, that are currently affecting the building? Response, investigations over time have revealed different reasons for poor air quality. There was a chemical leakage in September 2016. There were fiberglass particles later that year. Mold issues affecting the intensive care unit and operating theater suites. And several interventions were made to correct the problems. After the investigation done by the PAHO team, they concluded that mold was the significant problem affecting the building. Question 2, would the Minister please state whether or not the symptoms being experienced by those affected are consistent with mold ingestion, inhalation, or are the affected persons experiencing symptoms that are consistent with other mycotoxin interactions? Response, information provided by clinicians indicates that the symptoms are consistent with mold inhalation, not ingestion. Question 3, would the Minister please state what measures are in place to track all the persons that have been exposed to those mycotoxins? Response, the staff clinic has been put in place to evaluate staff. Further studies being commissioned to track persons who have been recorded in the staff clinic. With regards to patients, information is recorded within the respective patient dockets. Toxins, and this is just a definition, toxins are the chemicals produced by some molds. Toxic exposures have not been attributed to inhalation, but to large ingestion of mold-infested food. This is according to the experts. Question 3B, would the Minister please state how many post-operation infections have been sustained at Cornwall Regional since March 2016, and whether or not there have been any deaths due to these complications? Response, see below preliminary data from the hospital monthly statistical reporting system regarding post-operative wound infections at the Cornwall Regional Hospital. Information on deaths is not available at this time. I can get that hopefully when we get it. I'll be happy to pass it on, Mr. Speaker. But it does show the table 2015, 11, 2016, 13, 2017, 10, 2018, January to March, 0. Question 4, would the Minister please state whether or not an email was sent to him on February 28, 2017 by the Chief Medical Officer advising that there should be an evacuation of the main building at Cornwall Regional Hospital? Response, yes, an email was received on the matter. Question 5, if the answer to part 4 is in the affirmative, would the Minister please state what informed the decision to go against the recommendations and on whose advice was the decision taken? Response: a meeting was held on February 28, 2017 among the Minister, the Chief Medical Officer, the Permanent Secretary, and several branch heads, at which the complex issues in treating with the Cornwall Regional Hospital crisis were discussed, which included also that email. It was agreed at the aforesaid meeting to continue working as a team on a plan for the escalated evacuation of patients and staff from the building. The then Chief Medical Officer subsequently indicated, Mr. Speaker, via letter of the same date, that a closure notice would not be issued. Question 6. Would the Minister please indicate the respective dates on which the report from the Pan American Health Organization and report from the Medical Association of Jamaica were received? Response: the Pan American Health Organization Environmental Hygiene Assessment of Cornwall Regional Hospital report was received on March 27, 2017 via email. A workplace inspection report, Cornwall Regional Hospital, was received via email from the President of the Medical Association of Jamaica on April 3rd, 2018. This is earlier this year. Question 7A, would the Minister please state when the nurses, junior doctors, and senior management staff were informed of and shown copies of the reports of which reference is made in Part 6? Response: frequent and ongoing meetings have been held with the management and staff of the hospital and the Western Regional Health Authority, in which persons were kept abreast of the issues affecting the hospital, including the findings of various air quality tests. The findings of the PAHO Environmental Hygiene Assessment Report were made public as early as April 2017. Further, it was publicly disclosed that mold was the significant problem affecting the hospital, and mold remediation was undertaken at that time. Question 7B, would the Minister please state what are the reasons that informed the decision to evacuate the building now instead of 1 year ago? Over the course of the last year, various sections of the hospital building were evacuated. The final evacuation was facilitated by the ongoing works that were carried out on the hospital property site, including at the staff quadrants and at the Falmouth Hospital, to develop alternate space for relocation of various services. Question 8, would the Minister please indicate the number of operating theatres that are available at the Falmouth Hospital, the Noel Holmes Hospital, and the Savlamar Hospital, and the average number of surgeries that are performed at each hospital per day? Response: surgical procedures performed, Western Regional Health Authority, 2017 to 2016. At the Cornwall Regional, Mr. Speaker, some 3,490 in 2017. 573 of that were done at Falmouth, but done by the Cornwall Regional staff because of the relocation of that service. At the Sav Hospital, 1836, Falmouth, 1,101, Noel Holmes, 42, a total in the region of 5,469. Average number of surgeries done in the region, based on the question I asked, Mr. Speaker, for total emergency and electives, total number of operating rooms, and average number of surgeries per day. For Falmouth Public General Hospital, total number of emergency surgeries, 183. Number of operating rooms, 4, 2 of which were Falmouth controlled and operated. 2 additional which were added were controlled primarily by the Cornwall Regional staff, and averaging two surgeries per day. Savlamar, 501, 2 operating theaters, 5.6 per day. Noel Holmes, 1 minor operating theater, no emergency surgeries during that time recorded. Cornwall Regional Hospital, 1,228 emergency surgeries, 2 operating theaters at Falmouth for electives, 2 private facilities. I should add that we use the 4th floor OT up to April 2018 and the 5th floor up to June 2017. This is in the main building, but then eventually had to evacuate those. On average, we did 13.6 emergency surgeries per day at Cornwall Regional Hospital. Question 9, would the Minister please state what is the original timeline for completion of the work of the facility. Response: the original timeline was March 2018 and was based on a scope which involved the replacement of the HVAC system. So when I had first discussed it, it was based on that assessment and determination. Subsequently, the rehabilitation of specific areas of the hospital emerged. The scope of works have had to be expanded to address the structural and mechanical, electrical and plumbing issues which have now been identified across the entire hospital building, which has changed the scope of work and by extension the timelines beyond what was originally stated. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Dr. Campbell.
Thank you, Minister. Mr. Speaker, I hope today we'll be given a little latitude to have to interrogate the matter. To interrogate. Mr. Speaker, just before I get into what I want to say fully, if the minister could just tell me what was the terms of reference given to PAHO prior to their assessment.
I'm not clear I understand what the member is asking. Can I ask him to clarify?
Dr. Tufton.
You mean what PAHO was asked to do?
Yes. Dr. Tufton.
Well,
Dr. Tufton.
Yes.
You have an alternative.
I understand.
If the question that is asked, the speaker is speaking.
You hear?
If the question that is asked was not in the original, you are obligated to answer it. He has to put it to writing to you. Are you answering? You understand me?
Yes, I understand.
Go ahead. He has to ask you a question. Will you proceed to answer?
Right. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I can provide a more detailed response as it relates to the terms of reference. Clearly, I don't have it here, but it was directly related to the air quality issues and a request for them to come in and to assist us in assessing exactly what were the issues. That, in summary, is what we had asked them to do.
What I'm trying to get from you, Minister, did you at any point in time indicate to the members of the PAHO team as to whether or not closure or full evacuation of the facility was not possible?
As part of the terms of reference, I don't recall discussing that with them. I do know, Mr. Speaker, that in their final report that they gave us in March, they did indicate specifically in their report that closure was not practical, and therefore we should attempt to address the issues as best as possible, given the importance of the main building remaining, at least in some sections.
I just want to have it on record as to what exactly the minister is stating is the position. I would encourage members from both sides, before we defend or attack, just to familiarize themselves with the issues surrounding Cornwall region. I will not be rushed today. Not today, not today, Satan, not today, not today.
Order, please.
I will not be rushed today. Not today, Satan. Not today,
Order,
Satan.
please.
Not today. Not today. Mr. Speaker.
Please do not disturb the member who is asking a question. Go ahead, Mr. Campbell.
Mr. Speaker, page 6 of the PAHO report, and I can mention the PAHO report because we asked specifically about it here. Page 6 of the PAHO report states that all inspections are visually based. Visually based. We're talking about a building where persons are having symptoms involving their respiratory tract. Comparing the main reason the minister said he asked for the assessment was surrounding air quality issues. How can you make a full assessment of air quality issues from a visual inspection?
The question you presented.
It is one of the questions, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, I am not able to answer that question. I'd ask the member to direct that to the PAHO technical team.
No. Hold on a second. Mr. Speaker, my first question was what was the terms of reference. When you engage PAHO to come and do the assessment, what is it that you are asking them to do? The member responded saying that he wanted an assessment of air quality. He said so. Yeah. I am asking, and I'm asking the members here, through you, Mr. Speaker, to the member, and for all who are listening out there, how can you make a full assessment of air quality concerns based on a visual inspection? Impossible. Why would I need to direct that to PAHO?
Mr. Speaker, clearly the member has a difficulty with the PAHO report. And again, I say, let me just finish, please, that he rightfully ought to direct that to that entity. And I'll be happy to arrange a meeting in the interest of transparency and cooperation. I'll be happy to arrange a meeting with the member at my office and the PAHO team to discuss the nature of the report. And so if the member is interested in that, then that's fine. We can arrange it. But what I will say, Mr. Speaker, without elaborating too much, is that the report contains very specific identification of mold and the types of mold. And I am not clear that a visual inspection only, even though that would be a part of the process, could have accounted for that kind of identification. But I'm prepared to meet with the member and to engage PAHO around the report, if he so chooses.
Mr. Speaker, through you, sir, I'm always willing to meet with any stakeholder in the sector as we work towards making a better delivery of health care. But that's the first concern that I had, Mr. Speaker. You have toxins in aerosol form, they're in the atmosphere, and you're doing a visual inspection. That's the first concern. My second concern, Mr. Speaker, is that an assessment was also done by a local group who also provided a report. The team included persons from the University of Technology and a toxicologist as well. And they went into details as to what exactly they found in the building. And the minister has the copy of the report as well. Sulfur dioxide, nitrogen dioxide, carbon monoxide, formaldehyde gas, hydrogen sulfide, ethyl chlorine, acetaldehyde, acetic acid, xylene, asbestos, fiberglass. All of these were clearly listed in the report that came from the University of Technology, done by the group from the university, including a toxicologist, Dr. Alverston Bailey. And a copy of said report was also given to the Minister of Health. So when the answer to the question says that only mold, we know that that is not true. the minister knows that it is not true because he also has the report from that group at the university.
No, Mr. Campbell. I can't allow you to say that.
No, you can ask him if I'm lying. Ask him if he has it and if it says so.
You cannot say that the minister. Well, if you are accusing the minister of being a liar, if the minister knows and carried here, it is against the standing order.
Mr. Speaker, I am asking through you, is the minister aware of the report? You are
saying that you know, and the minister knows that what he carries is not true. And I am saying that is not the way to do it.
Mr. Speaker, I am fully up and running today. Question 6, Mr. Speaker. Question 6. From this paper.
Let me advise you, Mr. Campbell.
Would the minister indicate the respective dates on which the report from the Pan American Health Organization and the report from the Medical Association of Jamaica were received? His answer that the Medical Association of Jamaica that he received it on April 3rd, 2018. So he has answered that he received the report in the answers here, Mr. Speaker.
Yes, I have a copy here.
The Medical Association have said that they submitted it to him from March 2017, but he has said here
and
that
you
he
are
got
saying
it
what?
In 2018.
And you are saying what?
I am saying to you that in that report that I can read directly from it, sir, when I ask the question, what are the toxicants in the building if it is only mold? He pointed out that there was a leak in 2016 and there was asbestos in 2016, and then he went on to say that the conclusion, and he only mentioned PAHO, was that it is mold.
And I'm saying to you, Mr. Campbell, if you are not satisfied with the answers given to you, you ask for an, if you are not satisfied,
I stand to be guided, sir, yes?
If you are not satisfied with these answers,
yes,
and you are not satisfied with what you are getting now, and at the next sitting of the House, you can submit questions.
Oh no, Mr. Speaker. Oh no. The questions are asked here today, sir. I think, sir, you are misinterpreting your powers. The questions were asked here today.
Yes.
They are in this document that he submitted as answers to the question.
And you are not satisfied.
What's going on?
Mr. Speaker.
What is this?
Mr. Speaker.
What is really going on?
Dr. Tufton, have a seat. Go ahead, Mr. Campbell. Mr. Campbell, if you want additional answers to the questions, get up and ask the question without creating a debate.
Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker,
I'm
please.
speaking, so I should listen to you.
Are you finished?
No, not yet.
All right, I would like to address you.
If you are not satisfied with the answer that you get, you submit additional questions in writing. Well,
Mr. Speaker.
Dr.
Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, please. Yes, I have to protect the member from my side. Marcia is still here, so I won't say anything. The minister is here. The member asks the question, and the minister is standing to answer the question. You should allow the minister to answer the question. These are not further questions the member is asking. He's just asking for clarification, and he has the copy. The minister is available and is ready to answer.
Minister.
He didn't say
Minister,
that he's lying.
You are obligated to answer the questions asked. And if you don't have the answer, you advise the member that you will, at a later date, put it in writing and let him have it.
Mr. Speaker, I thank you for your... Mr. Speaker, I thank you for your diligence in defending the... Mr. Speaker, thank you, sir. I appreciate your diligence and oversight of the process, given what has transpired in the past. Let me just say to the member. Let me say to the member that I am aware of a report that was done, as stated in the responses by the Medical Doctors Association, and I maintain, as stated in the answers, that I only received that report in 2018, even though it is said that they delivered or did it a year before. And in fact, the president of that association confirmed to me that it was sent to some other place, but I never received it. When we received it, I did refer it to the technical experts in the ministry, the CMO and others, who did their examination, and I maintain my position as it relates to the responses that I've given in terms of what was the main find. And the main find, which we have depended on, the PAHO report, is that mold was the primary contaminant in the building. If the member wants to elaborate more on other specifics, happy to meet with him and have a discussion around that.
No, but Mr. Speaker, the question reads, would the minister please confirm whether or not it is only mold infestation that is affecting the building at Cornwall Regional Hospital? That was the question. The answer given to the question is in the affirmative, that it is only mold. I am saying to you, Mr. Speaker, the report that he speaks of, that we both would have read, speaks about several other contaminants, toxins, that were present, toxicants, right? That were present in the building. So I am suggesting, Mr. Speaker, that seeing that the answers are provided today, it would have been misleading this House to suggest that mold is the only thing that is affecting the building, because the report would have been read prior to today. I never asked about primary era.
Mr. Speaker, I have nothing further to add to what I've said. Again, I am prepared to provide the technical people to elaborate on what the member seeks clarity on. But as far as I am concerned, based on the response I have given, that is what I have given at this point in time. And I stand by that position.
Mr. Speaker, had I been aware that we're in a dictatorship, I wouldn't be here. My question that the people of Jamaica would like answered, they would want to know if persons are in a building and there are toxicants in the building, people would want to know what it is that they are exposed to. It is through this information, Mr. Speaker, you can, as a medic, determine what are the likely short-term, medium-term, and long-term side effects that these persons may suffer from. Without an identification of the full list of toxicants, any other suggestion made is a guess being hazard. That's right. Because how else can you honestly say that these persons are not going to have long-term complications if you don't know what is affecting them? So it is important for us to lay down at number one on the paper, what are the toxicants in the building?
Mr. Speaker, I have indicated the member, with due respect to the member.
Dr. Tufton.
Mr. Speaker,
Dr. Tufton, hold on.
Due respect, no, let me just respond.
Just a minute. Members. Wait, Mr. Campbell. Dr. Campbell, 1 minute. Members, we would like to do this thing in an intelligent way. Dr. Campbell is not satisfied with the answers that he has received in writing. He is asking some additional questions. I have advised you that if you don't have the answer, you must advise.
Thank you very much, Mr.
If you don't have the answer, I say, if you don't, you have to promise this House to present the answers in writing
Mr. Speaker,
next week.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Let me just continue, Mr. Speaker, and I thank you, Mr. Speaker, for your guidance, in your wisdom. I would say on the last comment by the member, unfortunately is insinuating that adequate care is not being taken to address any possible concerns raised by the staff, and I would dare say he does not have an authority on that issue, Mr. Speaker, and in terms of the concerns. The questions go on to, the answers to the question go on to suggest that a study has been commissioned that will seek to assess each worker at Cornwall Regional coming out of the concerns that have been raised by some of the workers, and that we will elaborate on in more specific detail. We're working out the terms of reference for that study, and that will address all the other issues. And therefore, I just suggest to the member, don't insinuate, or explicitly or implicitly, that we don't care about what is happening. That's why we don't want to elaborate on toxins.
Mr. Speaker.
You should be an incinerator.
Mr. Speaker.
The member is unable to ask his questions because you are disturbing him. Go ahead, Mr. Campbell.
Mr. Speaker, I am not insinuating anything. I am saying exactly, explicitly what I want to say. I am saying, Mr. Speaker, that in order for you to treat any patient at all who would have been exposed to toxins, contaminants, for you to treat them appropriately, you must know what it is that you are treating. Yes. It is as simple as that. Where is the insinuation in that? That is common sense, Mr. Speaker. Any medical person or anybody else who is thinking about the matter can tell you that. You have to know in order for you to be able to treat. So, moving along, Mr. Speaker, because I think the judgment is out on that one. The minister spoke of fiberglass particles. We're still on the answer to question one. He spoke of fiberglass particles. In his statement to this House on the 24th of April, he made reference to the fact that after cleaning the HVAC system, which he did in 2016, that it exacerbated the problem. It made it worse. It begs the question then, Mr. Speaker, who is it that was given the contract to clean the HVAC system, and what are their qualifications? Because it is not every contractor that is qualified to do medical work. So I am asking the question, seeing that he has admitted that cleaning the HVAC system, which was out of operation from in the 90s, and putting it back into operation compounded the problem, made it worse. Who is it that got the contract to clean that system, and what are their qualifications?
Mr. Speaker, again, I can provide more particulars to the member on that. But let me just say, when the initial challenge was discovered, which is a chemical leak, and there was a determination that it had contaminated the AC vents, an attempt was made to clean the vents. We had discussions and got permission by the National Contracts Commission, given the emergency nature, to find the best source to deal with the cleaning of the vents. the company Sinopharm, which is a Chinese company, was approached and discussed with the possibility of solving the problem. As far as I know about them, and we can get more details, they are the largest pharmaceutical company in England, the largest producer of in China of medical equipment, operators of many hospitals, and builders of many hospitals. One of the challenges that we face in dealing with the Cornwall issue, Mr. Speaker, was that because we have not built a hospital for an extended period of time, and as the member suggests, rightfully so, a hospital is a special purpose vehicle. It has particular requirements, and therefore no simple contractor who builds buildings can deal with some of the complications that exist. Air quality and air management and airflow are important. That particular entity, which at the time was offering some services to the ministry, and in fact, nurses to go to China for training, specialist training, indicated their interest and their specialization, and they were asked to do it. They brought in, as I understand it, a robot type equipment which they inserted in the vent system to mop up the internals of the vent system. And in the process, apparently, it disturbed the fiberglass lining of the vent system, which created an additional pollutant. Nobody else in Jamaica had that type of equipment, and in fact, it was a sincere attempt to try to address that problem.
So it was done deliberately. Floyd, you would not have done that, so be quiet. Because you wouldn't have done that, so be quiet.
Just go ahead. Go ahead. Follow the point.
Mr. Campbell, just tell me which... Mr. Campbell, just tell me which question you're on now. Which are the questions you're on now? What number questions you're on?
That was still number one, you know, Mr. Speaker. That was still number one.
What? And number one?
That was still number one.
No. Which question you're asking for additional information? Which? Same number one. Proceed.
There's a 183. There's a question. Question number two, Mr. Speaker. I asked if the minister would state whether or not the symptoms being experienced by the persons affected are consistent with mold ingestion or inhalation, or if they are consistent with other mycotoxins. Again, his answer is limited to mold. The symptoms being experienced, respiratory symptoms, persons having difficulty breathing and having to be nebulized, some even having to be resuscitated, CPR. Musculoskeletal issues, having musculoskeletal weakness, persons having elevated blood pressures, headaches. One member had an open lung biopsy and actually has pulmonary fibrosis, which means that the life expectancy of that individual has been significantly reduced. And anybody here can go and research that for themselves. The question as to whether or not all of these symptomatology are consistent with just mold is what was asked. And the minister has answered that it is yes. If we go back to the same report from the Medical Association, they found pulmonary irritants, pulmonary sensitizers, acute skin irritants, neurotoxins, which I assume is what is accounting for the musculoskeletal issues. They also found microbial volatile organic chemicals. The fact of the matter is, Mr. Speaker, the reports contradict what is being said. If you look at the dialysis unit, which they never said they found any mold, But the dialysis unit persons, they were having symptoms and the unit was closed. Those persons, they moved out everyone, and the dialysis services were costing the government $2 million per week. So when I ask the questions and persons want to just brush them aside, they're not trivial matters. These are things that have impacted on the well-being of individuals and their future.
Mr. Campbell, so that we do not have a problem. Mr. Campbell.
Mr. Speaker, the member is a medical doctor and therefore is in a much better position to manipulate terminologies and solutions and so on. I have no such expertise, and I humbly submit that to the extent that I give medical advice, it is based on the advice that I am given. And as a consequence, I am well prepared to provide those clinicians an opportunity to expand. What I will say, though, Mr. Speaker, the member depends a lot on this UTEC study that was done, the UTEC team that did the study on behalf of the Medical Doctors Association. Just to avoid, I don't want to accuse the member of mischief. Maybe it's ignorance, and I just want to clear it up. The PAHO team, Mr. Speaker, came to Jamaica. They set up a very sophisticated apparatus, which includes significant equipment. They spent many days going through floor by floor, room by room, testing the air quality issues on the inside of the building and on the outside of the building, and then generated a report which has become an important part of the solution that we have embarked on. The UTEC team that came without suggesting any motive, and I want that to be clear because I am sure their intentions were sincere. They came and spent less than a day. They had, as I am told by the hospital management, no equipment. And so some of the specifics that the member is referring to, Mr. Speaker, I am prepared to engage in a conversation around that if he so desires. But I'm just to avoid any conclusion that the PAHO team were less than professional in their approach. I just want to make that clear. Secondly and finally, Mr. Speaker, as it relates to the various symptoms and diseases and so on that are described by the member, I am as concerned about these issues as the member is, and hence the ordering of a comprehensive medical assessment of every single employee of the hospital, an independent team to lead that process, which will be announced shortly.
Find the power report.
Order, please. Mr. Campbell, please advise me which question you need to ask additional question on.
All of them, Mr. Speaker.
All of them?
All of them.
Ask questions. Don't give me a debate.
Questions.
Ask additional questions. And if the minister cannot answer them now, he must commit to the House that he will bring the answers. If you don't, I don't want no speech from you. If you don't have the additional answers, please advise that you will get it to the House. Mr. Campbell, I don't want a debate from you because you are indicating that you know the answers to the questions you're asking, and that is not fair. If you know the answers, don't ask the question. If you want additional information, advise the minister you are not satisfied with this and you want further information on it. Let him bring it. If he don't know it now. He say he doesn't know it now, he must bring it to us.
No, hold on.
Question, Mr. Campbell. I question and let's go. Let me know which question you want further information.
Yes, Mr. Speaker.
Yes.
The question was asked as to who is given with the information. Is the member from over there who is outside?
Order, please.
But anyways, Mr. Speaker, the third question. The third question asks if the minister would state the measures that are in place. If the minister...
Mr. Buchanan.
No.
Because I hear you so hard.
Mr. Speaker, the third question.
Order, please.
That was asking about the tracking of persons. An important part of tracking the persons and being able to monitor them appropriately would be the use of technology or safekeeping of records. The president of the Jamaica Medical Doctors Association has said that the records of his members are missing. He stated that publicly. My question to the minister is whether or not he can verify if the records for the medical staff at Cornwall Regional Hospital are available, and if he can state to this house today that what the president of the JMD has said is not so, because it was very concerning.
Mr. Speaker, I have no such information that any records are missing.
I just thought the government would be interested. And the president, sir, Mr. Speaker, the president, no lesser individual than the president for the Jamaica Medical Doctors Association, on all angles, said,
Mr. Campbell, you ask the minister a question, and the minister answer you. If you have further questions, ask them. I don't want a debate on every question. I'm not going to sit here and allow that to happen.
That's fine, Mr.
Ask
Speaker.
additional question if you're not satisfied with these answers. And if the minister don't have the answer, he must undertake to present them at the next sitting of the House. I don't want the minister to get up giving a big speech.
Mr. Speaker, I am standing on a point of order. I'm standing on a point of order.
Point of order. State the point of order.
Okay.
Order, please. State the point of order.
Mr. Speaker, it is ironic.
State your point of order.
I am stating, Mr. Speaker.
Go ahead. You haven't started.
It is ironic, Mr. Speaker. In conducting...
Order, please. Let's hear the gentleman state point of order.
I'll await silence and your protection.
Disturb Mr. Buchanan. Order, please. Let Mr. Buchanan state his point of order. Go ahead, Mr. Buchanan.
Mr. Speaker, it is ironic that in managing the proceedings of this House, when a member from that side is speaking, you would called to us by name here, and the member is trying to ask fundamental questions affecting the lives of ordinary Jamaicans in the western end of the island, and you're not protecting him as aggressively as you would have protected members on your side. The member telling me to sit down. I merely said something to him while he was speaking.
Mr.
And you called out my name, and he wasn't dealing with a matter more fundamental than the matter that the member was dealing with. And I find it ironic, Mr. Speaker. I find it politically interfering, Mr. Speaker, that you would enter upon such reference in continuation of order.
Mr. Campbell, if you have any additional questions, ask them now. I'll adjourn the House.
Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I wish to submit to you and to this Honourable House that we are approaching that point where we are descending into part 2 of this issue that occurred a few weeks ago. I am submitting that the member who is asking the question is part of the reason why we're having these challenges, because he is asking the questions in a halting fashion. I would submit to the member that he has his questions, he enunciates them with a sense of alacrity so that the member can rise and respond, but don't spend 10 minutes between each question asking for a debate or suggesting that there are comments to come. In other words, speed up the process so we can get on with the business of the House. And anything that the minister cannot respond to your satisfaction, you simply have him respond after checking with his ministry and coming back. But use the time in a manner that can bring the greatest results in the shortest possible time. That avoids conflict across the floor. That is my suggestion as a means by which we can get past this process.
Mr. Campbell, just before you proceed, as Speaker of this House, I'm going to make the following statement. Last week, the behavior in this House was as such we were condemned by many people across Jamaica and the world. I am not prepared for us to embarrass ourselves under my leadership one more time. The standing orders say, if you need additional information and any questions, get up and state it. Don't give a speech or a debate before you ask additional questions on what is on the paper. If the minister does not have the answer, he should advise the Speaker that he does not have the answer and at what time he intends to get it and bring here. I am not going to sit here and have question 1 asked in a filibustering mood for the whole night. Not again. I'm not going to get you to write that it is my weakness why the behavior of this House is at this stage. So I'm going to say it now. Regardless of Mr. Buchanan's behavior, and he was doing well the other day, he has returned tonight to his old ways. Now, Mr. Campbell, get up and state, Mr. Speaker, on question 2, I wish the following information in addition to what? And you, if you don't have the information, you advise us when you will present it. That is how we're going to do it.
Mr. Speaker, having said it the first time, you didn't have to say it to me a second time. So I'm very aware of what you're saying, sir. And I'm prepared to respond. So please ask the question and let us get on with it. Mr. Speaker, I have all night if that is required.
Mr. Campbell, tell me which question you want additional information on and what the information is that you need.
Mr. Speaker.
Question, Mr. Campbell, what, and question what? Order, please.
Mr. Speaker, question number 5.
Question? Question 5.
The response says that a meeting was held on February 28th, and essentially what it states is that the Chief Medical Officer indicated via letter of the same date that a closure notice would not be issued. Am I to understand from that the minister is suggesting that there was a change of mind of the Chief Medical Officer read the recommendation to evacuate the hospital?
Can the member just ask all the questions and then I'll respond? Huh? No, I can't answer that. Don't mash up everything. All right.
Dr. Tufton. Dr. Tufton. Mr. Campbell. Order, please. Mr. Campbell is asking for additional information on each question and a question that to give the answer. He is not going to, I don't want him to prepare questions. He has asked a question on question 5. If you cannot answer it, you advise him when you can.
Mr. Speaker,
members, we are on our way making the headlines that we have returned to our old ways which we apologized for last week. And I am not going to be a party to that. Go ahead, Dr. Tufton.
Hey, I am happy that I understand the word.
Mr. Speaker, in relation to that particular question, I can only assume, since I'm not in the mind of the former CMO, that the discussions that took place, which is contained in the response that he has, influenced the member at that time not to issue a closure notice, as he stated in the second piece of correspondence which he did. So I don't want to assume what was in his head, but that is my interpretation.
If there was a change of heart of the Chief Medical Officer and he no longer was going to go ahead, as stated that they'll be going ahead with the escalated plans, if he had changed that, what led the minister to seek the advice of the Attorney General as to who has the authority to close the facility?
Mr. Speaker, I'm only prepared to say that the Attorney General is a legal advisor to the government, and I have a right at any point in time to seek the Attorney General's advice.
Mr. Speaker, my understanding is that there was a recommendation to close. There's a meeting. The minister is saying that he's of the opinion that there was a change of heart, and even with the change of heart, he still went to the Attorney General to find out who has the right to close the facility. The public will judge.
I know you're speaking to the public.
This man was just talking to the public.
Mr. Campbell,
Don't come to Parliament to represent myself.
You have the answers in your hand.
Yes.
Not in your telephone. Deal with the question and answers in your hand.
You want to look at the telephone?
Go ahead. Go ahead. I am waiting on you to go ahead.
Mr. Speaker.
All right, go ahead. Do what you want to do with it.
Don't join the penny section. I am not looking at any WhatsApp messages, right? I am looking at documents. Yes? Documents. That's what I'm looking at. I am saying, the member who emailed me is from over there, but he's now outside. One of yours.
But you would do that better than anybody else.
Mr. Speaker, email communication. Same 5, same 6, same 5. Same 5. Email communication. November 17, 2017, 12:40. It's directed to the Minister. I would like to bring to your attention the email update below from the Western Region Technical Director. I'm particularly concerned about the following. On Monday, November 13, 2017, Staff and Occupational Health and Safety Officer observed particulate matter coming from the ducts into the air while a surgical procedure was being conducted in the operating theater. I wonder if you understand what I just said. It's coming from the former Chief Medical Officer to the Minister of Health. That whilst an operation is taking place in the middle of the patient on the operating theater open, that you have particulate matter falling down into the wound of the person. Operating theaters, Mr. Speaker, are sterile.
What?
Yes, that's dangerous.
When?
This was November. It goes on to say, I think at this point we must seek alternate theater space to allow for at least a week closure of all operating theaters at Cornwall Regional to facilitate the necessary repairs so the operating theater spaces to be safe. Though we have discussed this before, I think we need to proceed to one or two alternatives. Mr. Speaker, does that sound like a man who had changed his mind about the facility? Or does it sound like somebody who still had the concerns about the inadequacies at the facility?
Mr. Campbell, you know the rules. You are breaking the rules. I am saying to you, you have the questions before you. If you need additional advice on the questions, ask them and the answers that you get. I don't want a deliberation of a speech given by the minister anywhere.
Mr. Speaker, we are trying here to establish the premise under which a minister of government, having been informed by technocrats that he should close a facility because there are allergens, carcinogens, and toxogens in a building, went against that advice. I am showing you here that there was no change of mind of the chief medical officer, because up until November they were still having challenges and he was still complaining vociferously about the actions to be taken. How is that departing from what the questions are seeking to establish in this house? It may mean, sir, that you have totally lost your bearings as to what your role as Speaker of the House ought to be in maintaining order and seeking for the truth to be said in this house.
I'm going to tell you what my role is.
Rubbish. The man is behaving like he's at a political meeting.
Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, hold on a minute. Hold on. Mr. Speaker, I have never heard that level of rudeness in respect of an address to the Speaker of this honorable House. And I demand an apology on behalf of this side of the House. I demand an apology.
Mr. Campbell.
And if there's no apology, I am suggesting to you, Mr. Speaker, that you adjourn this honorable House immediately.
Mr. Campbell. Mr. Campbell.
Yes, sir.
I require you to withdraw those remarks, and I'm advising the Hansard. They'll be struck from the Hansard on my direction. Mr. Campbell, if you do not withdraw those questions, that statement,
adjourn the House.
I am not going to listen to you any further.
We will not sit here and listen to that level of rudeness.
You can't tell me, you can't direct me as to what my role is. I'm waiting on you, Mr. Campbell.
Mr. Speaker, what exactly am I being asked to withdraw?
Have a seat.
Please be specific.
Miss Curtis, have a seat. Get from the Hansard. Get from the Hansard his statement, please. I'll read it for you. You see, Mr. Order, please.
Mr. Speaker, if it is the comment about losing bearing, sir, I withdraw the comment. And I proceed.
Mr. Campbell, you have withdrawn.
Yes.
And I am asking that they be struck from the Hansard.
Absolutely.
The Speaker has that authority. You read the standing orders. Mr. Campbell, before you proceed any further, you have asked some questions. The answers have been documented and presented to you. You are not satisfied with the answers in numbers. I wish that you would get up and say to question 3, this was my question, this is your answer. I need the following information. If the minister is unable to provide it, he will advise as to when he can provide it. I am not going to sit here and allow you to give a 2-hour speech on question 1, seeking additional information. You turn to the standing orders and hear what it says. You should have it. You've been here for 20 odd years. Get it. Mr. Campbell, if you have any additional question, get up, tell me which question you want additional information from and what information you need. And Mr. Tufton, you listen to them, you respond. No speech.
Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, it is not my intention. It's not my intention to be rude to you, sir, or to be disruptive. I, however, would like for us to be able to discuss the Cornwall regional issue without persons trying to interrupt the contribution that is being made from this side. And for persons to pretend as if those who have questions don't have the right to ask and receive appropriate answers for those questions. You know, you're my role model, you know. I'm trying to be like you. I'm trying to be like you. I'm trying to be like you. But Mr. Speaker, question 6. Question. Oh. But I didn't get an answer for 5. in relation to the follow-up email. Question in relation to question 5. The question was whether or not the minister was aware of the follow-up communique from the chief medical officer advising him of the particulate matter in the atmosphere whilst the person is on the operating theatre, and the request made by the technical director and the CMO that this has gone on too long and action must be taken now to close, to at least repair the operating theatre.
Mr. Speaker, there were many pieces of correspondence between myself, the technical team, including the former CMO. The member seems to have all copies of those correspondence. I would have to refer back to them. I am prepared to say, however, and stick to my position, that the former CMO's final position, having had that meeting with all the unit heads, was that a closure notice would not be issued. I cannot speculate beyond what was written in black and white, that the facility would not be closed down, or what was it he said. The member clearly is assuming many things. I'm not going to exercise that privilege.
Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, I notice, by the way, that when verbal blows are being thrown towards me, there's no protection from you. I've noticed that. I have not attempted to read any minds. If you listen, you will hear. I have not attempted, Mr. Speaker, to read any minds. I am making reference to an email. The minister quoted from the email here. Continue working as a team on a plan for the escalated evacuation of patients and staff from the building. Answer to question 5. No. In that email, my question, in that email, he spoke to the fact, that is the former chief medical officer, that the evacuation plan would follow. Because there's a recommendation to close within 10 days, and it said that the evacuation plan would follow. Did the Minister of Health receive the evacuation plan?
Mr. Speaker, again I say, as is contained in answer number 6, I think, that ever since the air quality issues were discovered and attempts were made to assess and to address while preserving the services because of the critical nature of those services, attempts were put in place to relocate at the pace of finding or putting in place alternative arrangements. That basically took us about approximately 12 months because we had to put alternative arrangements in place. So the member should appreciate that at no point in time were we not looking to find alternative spaces, but the fact is, given the nature of the hospital, we had to build literally in some instances those spaces. So yes, a plan was in place. That plan had to be revised periodically based on additional findings and the changing of the scope of work, and that plan influenced where those additional spaces had to be created or to facilitate the relocation.
Mr. Speaker, I think I have heard from the Minister that the statement that we'll continue to work as a team on a plan for the escalated evacuation of the building, and that he did get the plan from the technocrats as to how the building could have been evacuated in 2017 March. That's what he just answered in the affirmative too.
Mr. Speaker, just for the record.
When did the recommendation come?
Just for the record, because this is records now. The member is making assumptions that I have not stated. He's making assumptions that I have not stated.
No. Let me ask the question again then, because it seems as if I am misunderstanding what the minister is saying. My question was, there is an email that was sent on the 28th of February, 2017, at 7:30 in the morning, to the Minister of Health from the Chief Medical Officer at the time, Dr. Winston Delahaye. That email led to a meeting. The email made recommendation for the evacuation of the building within 10 days. They stated at that time that yes, some of the services were already off. From the minister's own presentation here on the 24th of April, he said that 70% of the services were already off the building at that time. His statement here. Following from the meeting, that second email came that said we're going to continue as a team working on the escalated plan. It went on further to say that the very CMO now was the person who was charged to go down there to look at the spaces. What's your question, Mr. Campbell? It also said that
the additional questions.
It said the evacuation plan would follow. I asked him, did he receive the plan? That's it, you know. They said evacuation within 10 days and that the plan would follow. Did he receive the plan?
Did you receive a plan, Minister?
Mr. Speaker, we get a revised position on alternative spaces periodically based on the problem. So I can't say what specific plan he's referring to, but there is always a plan which is a work in progress to relocate the rest of persons who are in the main building. I don't know how else to answer that.
We're not going to stay here until tomorrow with this. You have some questions. If you have, and let me say, I'm not going to sit here and allow you to read all speeches of the minister to ask me questions. You ask all the questions you wanted here. You get answers. Tell me which question, and I'll read the answer, and tell me what additional information you are looking, and the minister must either have them, don't have them, or will provide them. Do not proceed to read, speak, and debates. This is a question.
Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Campbell, I don't wish you to describe me as you did earlier.
No, I'm not.
No, hold on. You haven't apologized. You are simply just withdrawn.
No, man, I'm not.
You have not apologized. And I'm upset about it. You have not apologized.
No, man, I withdrew the statement.
You have simply withdrawn it.
Yes. That was what?
The wound is in.
Pardon?
The world has heard you. And I'm going to tell you, Mr. Campbell, I'm going to stand for the first time. You ask some questions, you get some answers. You are not satisfied with the answers you get. Read the question, read the answer, and ask the additional question on that particular question. Do not turn to other speeches and information to give me. These are the questions you have asked. You are going to deal with them. And I'm what?
Mr. Speaker, I was of the impression that the purpose of the question was to get out the information. Standing Order 17.2 said that the Speaker may refuse any question which in his opinion introduces matters not relevant to the original question. I haven't asked any irrelevant questions, Mr. Speaker, or which infringes on any of the provisions of Standing Order 16. I haven't done that either. Mr. Speaker, you so miserable?
Go on, next question. Next question.
I was not the one that demoted you, you know. Anyways, Mr. Speaker, question 6. I didn't demote you. Miserable. So miserable.
Mr. Campbell, let me assist you. After the questions has been given, supplementary questions may, at the discretion of the Speaker, be put for the purpose of elucidating the answer given orally, but the Speaker may refuse any such question which, in his opinion, introduces matter not relevant to the original question or which infringe on any provision of the standing order. I'm saying to you, listen to me carefully. You have asked some questions, you have gotten some answers, and I am giving you the authority to ask supplementary questions. I will use my discretion as to whether you're on the right road. So let us, at 4 minutes, almost 5 minutes after 6, proceed in that direction. Name me the question you want further elucidation on, and proceed to ask the Minister. Minister, I wish that you get up and answer the question. Do not give a speech. Okay. Campbell.
Thank you, Mr.
Question
Speaker.
what you're on?
6.
Question 6. Let me assist you, Mr. Campbell. Let me assist you. Question 6. Would the Minister please indicate the respective dates on which the reports from the Pan American Health Organization and the reports from the Medical Association of Jamaica was received? Answer. The Pan American Health Organization Environmental Hygiene Assessment Cornwall Regional Hospital report was received on March 27, 2017 via email. And the Workplace Inspection Report Cornwall Regional Hospital was received by me via email from the President of the Medical Association of Jamaica on April 3. What further question you want on that? Tease my discretion, Mr. Campbell, please.
Mr. Speaker.
Order, please.
Mr. Speaker.
Go ahead, Mr. Campbell.
It was said that the decision not to evacuate was overruled by verbal communication.
Speak in the mic. Let me hear you.
Based on the answer to question 6 here,
yes,
would the Minister now accept that the decision to overrule the recommendation of February 2017 had nothing to do with the assessment from PAHO?
Mr. Campbell, your question asked for the dates on which these reports were given.
I don't know.
And the answers are here. If you have additional on this particular question,
Mr. Speaker,
it has to be relevant to the question you ask.
It is. Mr. Speaker, just be patient.
Yes.
The question asks for the date when the reports were given, because the recommendation to close came before. So in asking this question, it would establish that the PAHO report came a month after the recommendation to close. Therefore, what was being said in the public space, that it was based on the PAHO report that it was not evacuated, could not be true if the report from PAHO came a month later. Sir, if we just calm down and follow where I'm trying to go with this, we would be out of here by now, you know. My simple question, seeing that the PAHO report came a month after the recommendation from the CMO, can we safely conclude that the decision to overrule, which was said in the public space by the Minister, that it was based on verbal communication from PAHO. Can we now conclude that PAHO had nothing to do with the decision to overrule?
You know, that's not a supplementary question to the question you asked. That is not supplementary to this question. Yeah. The minister is under my direction too, not him alone. That is not in this question. If you wish to ask that question, provide it in writing, and I will have the minister answer it. You asked 2 particular dates, and they are here. Move on to the next question. But, Minister, if you can assist me, go ahead.
Mr. Speaker, some clarity on the question, because unfortunately the question is being positioned in a way that may create mischief. First of all, there was no overruling of any decision. The member specifically has that in his questioning, which gives an assumption that is misleading. So just to clarify, nobody overruled anybody. I've already stated in the answers exactly how the discussions took place and what the follow-up correspondence of the former CEO said. An issue of closure will not be given. As it relates to the report, I never at any time said that based on a PAHO report, which I didn't have at the time, we made decisions. I could not have said that. That would be stupid. What I said was that I had discussions with a number of persons, okay? And I'm not going to give names as to who those persons are, but including PAHO. And those helped to formulate my own interpretation of the situation and brought to bear on the discussions and final decision. That's what I said, just to be very clear.
Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker. Lightning don't strike the same place twice, Darrell. You can't draw me out again.
Mr. Campbell, question number 1.
Mr. Speaker, I am rebutting what he said and asking a question. He says just now that there was no overruling. It was the Minister of Health. It was the Minister of Health who stated publicly that yes, the decision was overruled, but it was overruled after verbal recommendations from PAHO. He said so, not me. Minister, you said so. No, did you say so? No, did you say so? No, you can't tell me that. You can't tell me that. No, you can't tell me that. Is he changing his answer?
Order, please. We are dealing with question 6.
Is he changing his answer?
We are dealing with question 6. Question 6 asks 2 questions. You have the answers here.
I am pulling up the message that he posted. Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Campbell, I don't intend to spend much more time on this matter. So if you have any further... No, not yet. No.
Mr. Speaker.
No.
Mr. Speaker, no.
Please, Minister.
He said...
Mr. Campbell.
No, is he changing his answer to say yes, he did say the decision was overruled? It's a question. It's a simple matter. I said, I made the statement. statement that he said it was overruled based on a verbal report. He got up to say there was no such thing about overruled. Now he's saying yes, it was overruled. So is he changing his answer to say yes, it was overruled?
Mr. Speaker, I have said what I have said, and the member is entitled to assume anything he wants. But I have stated what I have stated. I have no further comment on that issue.
Yes, sir. Yes. Holy. I have now on question 7.
What question do you need further explanation on?
Pardon?
Number what?
7.
Number 7. Let me assist you. Would the minister please state when the nurses, junior doctors, and senior management staff were informed of and shown copies of the report, of which reference is made in Part 6? Minister, frequent and ongoing meetings have been held with the management and staff of the hospital and Western Region Authority, in which persons kept abreast of the affecting hospitals, including findings in various texts. The finding in the PAHO Environment Hygiene Assessment Report was made public. Further, it was publicly disclosed that mold significant problem affecting hospitals and mold remediation was understood. Do you have any further questions? You need further elucidation on this question?
Yes, sir.
State it.
Mr. Speaker.
Order, please.
Just before, I'm a little lost as to why you're reading the question and the answers. I'm a little lost as to why you're reading the question and the answers. My question, there was a detailed report from PAHO and a summary report. There was also a detailed report from the MAJ. My question that I'm asking is, did the Nurses Association of Jamaica, the Jamaica Medical Doctors Association, receive a copy, whether physical or a soft copy, of the report from PAHO and the report from the MAJ, the full detailed report?
Yes.
You need to have a copy of your report. Read your answer. Read your answer to him. No.
It's okay. Mr. Speaker, the answer to the question is the content of all the reports that the content of all the reports that we received on air quality, incidentally dating back to 2016 when the local firm Environmental Solutions was called in to do reporting, has always been discussed at the level of the hospital, where each Monday there was a meeting between the projects team and the leadership of the units within the hospital, and at least twice a month when I would go down and meet with the team. So if the member is asking about a substantive discussion around contents of report that were received, I would say to the member that yes, those discussions did take place. If the member is asking whether or not they had a hard copy of the report, that was not given until much later, after we received the report.
That's the spirit.
Mr. Speaker,
That's the spirit.
up to last week, based on my checks, they still did not receive a copy of the report from the minister. Mr. Speaker, when we say the content of the report was discussed with the staff, would it therefore mean that they would be aware of the fact that there were other toxicants other than just mold? Because even today, the argument being mooted by the minister is that the toxicants in the building are mold, even up to today. Because, no. The answers. When I went into the detailed MAJ report as to the other toxicants, up until today, those were not acknowledged that those are in the building. The staff were never told that those things are in the building. Were the staff aware that aflatoxins and other chemicals were there, other toxins were there that are known carcinogens? They were not made aware of carcinogens, cancer-causing agents, until this became public. So when we come here and we say that there are monthly meetings and that the content is discussed with them, they are in public saying that they were never aware that there were cancer-causing agents in the building and some of the other toxicants. So the question as to why is it that the report that you have, why wouldn't you share that with your stakeholders so they would be fully aware as to what is it that they are taking on? Because they went ahead to say they don't have a problem working as long as they know what it is that is causing their symptoms.
Again, I say that there were weekly meetings involving, in some instances, the experts who did the environmental tests in the early stages, our own internal environmental scientists, supported by Environmental Solutions. Those tests were in fact discussed. So from the chemical spill to the fiberglass particles and then to the mold. Indeed, the issue of asbestos, which the member referred to, was in fact discovered by the team in an old abandoned locked up kitchen which was assessed not to be disturbed and therefore was not creating a problem. And immediately upon discovery, a firm was hired to come in and to remove that particular matter from that abandoned section of the building. And all of that was discussed. So the member is misleading again to suggest that I have given the impression that it is only about mold. And I will say again that each time we discuss the reports in terms of the air quality and what were the issues. I mean, I have nothing further to say on that matter, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, again, I'm being accused of something and you're not protecting me. I'm not misleading. I'm merely relying on the answers that were provided to me. How is that misleading? If there's somebody misleading the House, it must be the person who provided the answers. It couldn't be me, sir, because I'm relying on the answers.
If you are not satisfied with the answers you have an alternative. Ask them as supplementary or document them for the next time. And Dr. Tufton, I'm going to ask you for the last time. Answer the questions. I don't want any further presentation from you.
Anyway, Mr. Speaker, operating theaters. The number of cases that were done.
That's questions what?
8.
Question 8. Go ahead, Mr. Campbell. Question 8. Additional information you need. Go ahead.
No. When I meet with the association and them complaining and cussing, I have to respond.
Additional information. Go ahead.
Mr. Speaker, the operating theater, Question 8. We see a list of the number of cases done. We also see a list of the emergency cases done. And one of the main arguments as to why the building, that the minister has put forward as to why he couldn't evacuate the building, was because he's saying that had he evacuated, persons would have died from the emergency surges that were needed. Yes, sir. If it is that, Mr. Speaker, we have not built any new operating theatre space at Cornwall Regional, it means that the building has now been evacuated and persons are not going to die because we have put an alternate arrangement in place. The question, therefore, is why couldn't we have put that alternative arrangement in place a year ago? Because the arrangement now...
Mr. Speaker, the member should know better. And it's a pity he's not demonstrating it. He fully well knows as a practitioner, medical practitioner that is, that operating procedures requires pre- and post-care. It's one thing to have an operating theatre. If you don't have the bed to admit the patient and the bed to put the patient after, then you have a difficulty. All elective surgeries are taking place now at Falmouth, where we had to add 50 additional beds, which involved building a new building, renovating substantially, which took the better part of 9 months after the design, and then to repair 2 additional operating theatres. It is based on the completion of that work that we were able to relocate the elective surgeries from Cornwall Regional to Falmouth. So for the member to suggest that we could just pull up and relocate because we have done it a year later is clearly not to appreciate the extent of the challenge that we faced and the need for pre- and post-operating care.
Again, Mr. Speaker, being attacked, no protection from you. I have a Ministry of Health for immediate release, March 2nd, 2017. Right? Same question. Same question. Yes, sir. And in that very release, the ministry stated that additional major relocations will take place during the course of next week. When preparatory work to facilitate these further actions will be completed. Additional space has been provided by the Adventist Church at Western Jamaica Conference Center, which is now being renovated to host additional clinics. In terms of operating services, the following actions are being taken. 5th floor at Cornwall is to be isolated and cleaned to reestablish operating theatre and intensive care services to the western region end of the island. Falmouth Hospital operating theatre suite to be commissioned immediately to facilitate elective surgeries. Immediately. This is March 2nd, 2017. New operating theatres at Falmouth Hospital to be open in approximately 2 weeks to facilitate elective and urgent surgeries. University Hospital of the West Indies to facilitate surgeries for critically ill neurosurgery patients.
Don't stretch me beyond. You ask a question as to how many of these places are there. The answer is here. You are coming with a different presentation.
No.
Yes.
No.
Okay. If you are not coming with a different presentation,
The minister answered.
go ahead. Let you read the question and ask the additional questions, answers you need on that question. Would the minister please indicate the number of operating theatres that are available in Falmouth,
Mr. Speaker,
Noel Holmes,
please.
Savlamar?
A second, please. I made a point to say that a year ago there was a recommendation to evacuate. One of the arguments being put forward is that we could not have done so because I think he said 3 persons per day would have died because of operations. They needed emergency operations. A year later, we have evacuated the building and there has been no new operating theater space that has been built. It simply means that that same recognition that something needed to be in place for emergency surgeries, that some alternative arrangement has been put in place now, which is why we don't have persons dying, because the building has been evacuated. I'm reading from a document.
Mr. Campbell, don't do that. You asked a question about the number of rooms. So that what you're coming with has nothing to do with this question. Move on to the last one, question 9. Please, if you have any additional.
It's okay. Mr. Speaker, question 9.
The last item, question 9.
Question 9.
And it's going to be 6:30. I plan to advise this between 2.
Mr. Speaker.
Question 9, Mr. Campbell.
Just before that, sir, if you look on the question notice paper.
Order, please.
Just before that, sir, if you look on the question notice paper, 9 questions have been answered, but if you look on the question notice paper, there are 10 questions. The 10th question has not been answered, which states, would the minister also state what is the budget for the remedial work to be done at the Cornwall Regional Hospital, the expenditure to date, and in what area this expenditure has been incurred? That question has not been answered. So I will rely on you to advise me as to when to expect those answers. But question 9.
Yes.
The response to question 9 is that the original timeline was from March 2018 and was based on a scope of work which involved the replacement of the HVAC system. So that was the timeline to have the facility back up and running. That you are going to replace the HVAC system by March 2018. Mr. Speaker, the document tabled here 2 weeks ago, the cabinet documents tabled here 2 weeks ago, says that the HVAC system, the contract, was signed in March 2018. How is it that we had a timeline to get this back up and running by replacing the HVAC system, but the very contract for the HVAC system was only signed in March 2018, based on the very documents tabled here in the Parliament?
Minister, you have an answer to that?
Again, Mr.
Go ahead.
Mr. Speaker, the member is demonstrating his ignorance of the issue, and I'd be happy to elaborate in more. Ignorance just means he's unaware. That's what it is. Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker. Yeah, you just have when you spoke to me. I'm just saying, the context in which he used the word is unparliamentary, and you should advise him to withdraw it. And he knows it, Mr. Speaker. He knows quite well.
Hey, we don't mind that. We don't mind that right, but I'm practical skill with the marks, not you.
Yeah, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, if the member is offended, meaning the other member who stood up, then I'll withdraw it. But he is demonstrating a lack of awareness of the circumstances and situation. Anyway, Mr. Speaker, the HVAC system, the process by which the HVAC system would have had to be secured required a number of pre-work. I mean, one had to do there was a contract that was awarded. Well, first of all, the scope of work had to be developed, which we used the Urban Development Corporation to support us on that. So a contract had to be awarded to assess and do the scope of work. And then, having done the scope of work, the equipment would have had to be designed and then a separate contract would have been awarded for building the system, because it's not a shelf item, it has to be custom designed and built. And then a third is likely to be awarded to install. And I'm not sure what timelines the member is referring to, but that is the process. Right now, we are in the process of building the system, having gone through the assessment and the design phase.
Mr. Speaker.
Last question, Mr. Campbell.
It is said that it's ignorance
Last
on
question,
my part.
Mr. Campbell.
I am speaking, sir. It
Go
is
ahead.
said that it's ignorance on my part. The answer to the question says the original timeline was March 2018 and was based on a scope which involved the replacement of the HVAC system. When the timeline of March 2018 was given, at that time there was a recognition of the fact that there needs to be a replacement of the HVAC system. So all of what he just said a while ago, I don't know what's the purpose of it, because his answer says that the timeline was March, and he acknowledged that those works needed to be done. Yes, it says
Mr.
replacement
Speaker.
of the HVAC system. That's what it
Mr.
says,
Speaker,
replacement
I'm not
of
sure what the source of the contention is, but let us calm down a little bit and maybe we can appreciate the response. Firstly, the problem started in September 2016. That's a year and a half to March 2018. When the HVAC system was seen to be the sole issue, there was an estimated time of over just about 12 to 15 months to do the pre-work, to order and build, and to install. So I am not sure why the member is so caught up around a timeline of a year and a half, which was perfectly reasonable at the time. But subsequent to that, of course, we have discovered additional issues, civil engineering issues, plumbing issues, electrical issues, and that has changed the scope of work and changed the timeline.
No, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, excuse me, sir. The era of contention is that his statement here is that March 2018 for the replacement of it, and the document tabled here in the Parliament, March 2018, said that the contract has just been awarded. That is where the contention comes in. Let me go again, sir. His answer to the question, the original timeline was March 2018 and was based on a scope which involved the replacement of the HVAC system. So that's 18 months. And he said that that would have been completed March 2018. I'm saying to you that the document tabled here in this house 2 weeks ago said that the contract for the HVAC system was only awarded in March of 2018. No.
Mr. Speaker, I have nothing further to say on that issue. I have nothing further to say.
Mr. Samudo, I invite
Mr.
you
Speaker,
to
I have a
adjourn the
question,
House.
sir. Mr. Speaker, I have a question, if you'd indulge me. Minister, just a simple question that has been perplexing me, and certainly many other people in the country. You said that the TOR, from what you can recall, specifically had to deal with air quality issues at Cornwall Regional, and the fulsome TOR you could not tell us right now. I have no problem with that. The finding of the PAHO team, as you indicated in the answer to question 1, was that the problem was primarily mold, significantly mold. I have just one little concern, and it has to do with the report from PAHO. If the report had come to us and to the minister to say that in the recommendations that closure is not recommended, I wouldn't have a problem with that. But the wording, since closure is not an option, it begs the question that why is it that PAHO has come out with that particular statement? It suggests to me as it would to most well-thinking persons, that there is some term of reference or predetermination that you are to come here to look at this particular thing, but we can't close the hospital. So, well, therefore, in their report, that would have to be their caveat, since closure is not an option. This is what we are going to recommend to the ministry to do that. Now, who gave PAHO the currency to say that closure is not an option?
You know, Mr. Speaker, just to be specific, it's difficult to extract one line from a report and draw conclusions around that one line. If the member read the report sufficiently, he would have seen where PAHO elaborated on the fact that this was the only type A hospital in that part of the country, and the important nature of the critical services that were being offered. I can only assume, as the member is assuming, but differently from his assumption, that PAHO, in their good sense and their capacity that they applied to the study, concluded, as many other well-thinking persons would have, that it would have been difficult to totally shut down the hospital, given the critical nature of the services. And indeed, that was in fact mentioned in the report.
Mr. Semuda.
Mr. Speaker, it is not our intention to conduct any further business today. Accordingly, I ask that you adjourn this Honourable House until May 22nd at 2 p.m.
Before I put the resolution, I am going to express my serious concern again after the behavior of some members in this House, which embarrasses many other members who sit here and don't say anything. And when the public outcry comes again, I wish that you don't return here having the minister begging the public to accept us. The House stands adjourned until the 22nd at 2 p.m.